Great. My name is Beth Huang, and it's really an honor to be joining you all today. I feel like I've joined Sarah on many of these kinds of panels or rallies since 2010. It's also a pleasure to join Senator Warren, Zakiya, and Mary Catherine. My name is Beth, and I'm the National Student Labor Action Project Coordinator. It's a joint project of Jobs with Justice and the U.S. Student Association. I'm a native Wisconsinite, a UW-Madison alum, and a former student government geek. I was also an activist in the 2011 worker uprising, which made me realize that I wanted to organize for life. The Student Labor Action Project builds power with students and workers on campuses across the country to combat the corporatization of higher education. Our organizing model is really based off of a couple of central premises. So first, no movement has won a change to the status quo without students and workers coming together and building power through direct action. The second piece is that universities are small enough to move, but big enough to matter. And then finally, we strongly believe that racial justice is inextricably linked to economic justice and education. SLAP was founded in 1999 when students of color with the U.S. Student Association recognized that the people who looked like them most on campus were working behind cafeteria counters. And they knew that they could not win educational justice without living wages and workers' rights on campus. So I'm not speaking today as a higher education policy wonk. I think we have many of those at the table, but rather I'm really speaking as an on-the-ground organizer who works with students who are struggling to pay for college every day. In Senator Warren's previous event, I actually worked with a student to tell her story about how she's likely not going to be able to pay for her next semester at UMass Amherst. She's missing just $1,000 to make it another semester, and she's at that point where she's crossing into her junior year and isn't sure whether she's going to be able to afford it. I see this crisis really as two-sided. One side is a lack of college affordability, and the other is an ever-growing crisis in student debt. Decreasing state investment and cuts to student aid are driving this crisis in college affordability, leading to exploding student debt. Meanwhile, colleges and universities are increasingly run like corporations, and real corporations are cashing in on this two-sided crisis. We heard from Senator Warren about the corporations such as Corinthian Colleges and Navient for gaming the system and putting profits over students. One thing that I'd like to emphasize is that there are two distinct constituencies of this two-sided crisis. On one hand, you have prospective and current students who feel the pain of paying for costs of college, which are really driven by decreasing state support. On the other hand, workers are in crisis in an era when a college degree is quickly becoming a requirement. Debt has risen nearly 30% in the past 7 years alone, and wages have stagnated. I can't emphasize enough that student debt isn't just a student issue. College affordability is a student issue. Student debt is an issue for working Americans who are repaying their loans. In this time of crisis for students who are being priced out of college, and in this time of crisis for workers on the verge of default, the most important thing that we can do is build power by organizing people to take collective action. So, what does that mean, and what do we do? So I have two arguments. So first, students and workers need to build power at local and statewide levels to put pressure on state legislators to increase investment in higher education and combat corporations that skim funding that should be used for students' instruction. Second, workers need to organize around debt relief and begin demanding more from their employers, from the federal government, and third-party loan servicers. So how do we organize students, right? How do we build solidarity between students and workers to build power? So students need to band together with faculty and staff to increase state funding and stop increases in costs of college. Administrators use a classic divide and conquer strategy in pitting students against faculty and workers in each instance when they try to justify tuition increases for students. Recently, at a tuition board hearing at the University of Oregon, administrators used labor costs as the key reason for hiking tuition despite declining state support and rampant spending on golden parachutes for senior administrators and, of course, the world-famous U of O Ducks athletics program. To say enough is enough, faculty with AFT and campus workers with SEIU supported hundreds of protesting students with the Student Labor Action Project by coming to this tuition board hearing during their lunch hour. There were so many campus workers wearing their SEIU t-shirts that it looked like a rolling wave of purple at this tuition hearing. Ultimately, students, faculty, and staff need to unite to increase state funding. In Vermont, one of the worst states in the country for state spending per full-time student, when students and faculty organized with AFT Vermont came together, lawmakers passed a bill to research new revenue streams for higher education and made a student leader the chair of the new committee. However, the Chamber of Commerce and campus administrators banded together to defeat the plan at the 11th hour. And I think this example really shows that what is possible, but also who is coming together to defeat these plans for new revenue. We need joint organizing between students and workers to make federal programs like the Pell Grant mandatory. We know that congressional Republicans are trying to gut these programs because ultimately they are a pathway to the middle class for particularly women and people of color who need credentialing to be called professional. So they're raiding student aid. In March, 10 students were arrested in protest to a $90 billion cut to federal student aid programs, including the Pell Grant and subsidized student loans. So the second strategy for student organizing that I think is critical is supporting undergraduate students to unionize. We need to be able to expand bargaining to be able to make students have a real voice on campus. Today, 4 out of 5 students work in an average of 19 hours a week. These jobs are, how many of you worked in college or are working in college? I almost always had 2 jobs. You know that these are almost always low-wage jobs. Did anyone ever get paid more than $10 an hour? Nope. There are like no hands going up in the room. We know that they're super part-time, they're low-wage, they're contingent, they don't cover the cost of college, and working students still have unmet need and are forced to take out loans. Student workers can come to expect these working conditions after college, which I think we all can agree is bad for the labor movement. Working in college doesn't have to be this way. A group of 70 peer mentors who are undergraduate student workers in the residence halls at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, unionized with UAW Local 2322, which represents graduate student workers, in late April after the Massachusetts Labor Board decision allowed all public higher education student workers to unionize. This really opens the floodgates to potentially tens of thousands of low-wage student workers across Massachusetts to organize and bargain with these universities. And I think what is incredibly almost poignant is that this is such a long fight with this resulted from such a long fight with the university, which tried to eliminate these jobs during finals week in the winter of 2011. And so students said that they were not going to have it anymore. They protested to save these 70 positions in the residence halls. They really just wanted to make $10 an hour, which is like absurdly low for the amount of work that they put in. And so when they successfully fought back for their jobs, they realized that they needed to unionize to continue to protect their job security because they knew that their jobs were consistently on the chopping block and forming a union was the only way to actually have power. And so they came together, reached majority. They actually reached the 70% on cards that every union says that we should reach before turning them into the university. The university fought back against these 70 students who really just wanted $10 an hour and job security, fought them in the Massachusetts Department of Labor, and then the university used some of the exact same arguments that Northwestern used to prevent football players from organizing, saying that they're students, they aren't workers, they shouldn't have rights in the workplace. The university tried to turn this job into an internship in the middle of this battle in the Department of Labor. And ultimately, the students won. The Department of Labor even said UMass misses the point in the argument about these students not being workers. And so, I mean, can we just take a moment to imagine if every student worker had experience in demanding job security? Imagine if every student left college with the experience in bargaining with their employer before they graduate and came to expect respect in the workplace and a voice on the job. What would the labor movement look like if undergraduate student workers then came into the workforce after graduation, knowing what it's like to be in a union, knowing what it's like to bargain with an employer across the table, and what would it look like for higher education if students truly had a voice on campus? So to make this vision real, the UAW Graduate Employee Organization backed these undergraduate student workers in this case in the Department of Labor. And what I think is so important about that is undergraduate student workers need unions to invest in a more vibrant labor movement because they're in a total uphill battle with universities that treat them as customers, not workers. This is essential because every sector of campus workers that organizes increases pressure on administrators in very different directions. Unionizing undergraduates means that a genuine solidarity forms between campus workers and students. It stops administrators from being able to pit students against workers and balances relations of power between administrators, who are more or less a CEO class at this point, and basically everyone else on campus. So, let's say we made college free today. There'd still be 42 million people in the US who owe $1.3 trillion. The other side of this crisis is the mountain of student debt that workers face. Organizing borrowers workplace by workplace is essential. The government isn't doing nearly enough to help workers get out of debt, and so through the Debt-Free Future campaign at Jobs with Justice, we're driving debt relief strategies to organize workers to turn the tide on the student debt crisis. Adjusting for inflation, the average student debtor with federal student loans owed 28% more in 2013 than in 2007, while the typical holder of a bachelor's degree working full-time experienced a 0.08% decrease in weekly earnings during that same period. So, I mean, and this is for the folks who graduated, right? So as we heard from Sarah's talk, that people with some college are not doing so hot, right? And so these are people who are in the class that were able to afford college for 4 to 6 years and actually come out with a degree. And student debt can follow workers for long after college, with some student debtors on 20, 25, or even 30-plus year repayment plans. In many cases, the amount that a student debtor repays can be more than 20% of their income. And we know that there are many people in public service jobs who had to take out degrees and have student loans. So there are 33 million people in public service jobs. So that's nonprofits, public sector. Of those 33 million people, only 233,000 borrowers are enrolled in public service loan forgiveness. This program can cap monthly payments at 10% of public service workers' post-tax income and eliminate any remaining federal student debt after 10 years. There's so few borrowers enrolled in public service loan forgiveness because it diminishes the Department of Education's profits from student loans, and student loan servicers lose business with every public service worker who enrolls in this program. As a result, the department and servicers don't promote the program nearly enough, although it could provide debt relief for millions of workers as early as 2017. The Debt-Free Future campaign seeks to enroll 40,000 workers in public service loan forgiveness this year. We're doing this by training union members about how to apply for this program through student debt clinics, webinars with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and day-long popular education trainings. At SLAP, we're leading a campaign at the University of Central Florida to take the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau's pledge to notify all campus employees and students of public service loan forgiveness. And of course, in a shameless plug, if you're interested in learning more about enrollment in public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment, we're having a webinar on July 1st at 8 p.m. Sometimes it feels like the American dream has been shattered. This crisis necessitates that we build power first on the local level through student-to-student and coworker-to-coworker organizing. When we've organized each other, we will see another reality for higher education. At the Student Labor Action Project and Jobs with Justice, we are excited to work with the Schenker Institute and the American Federation of Teachers to build power to make this vision a reality. It's been an honor to join you this afternoon. Thanks.